Isn't it depressing living in the northern hemisphere this time of year? You get up to go to work and it's dark. You come home and it's dark. You don't even see daylight. If only there was a way that I could fly on this lovely field at night. This is the CJ Tech night vision system for a Miniquad. It comes in this nice little pouch here, and let's see what you get in the package. There's something still in here. There we go. So this is a infrared emitter, and it's a very powerful one. It comes in this very sturdy case that's made of metal. It is heat sinked because this thing gets fairly hot. It weighs 76 grams. You can see here that we have a JST connector on the back, and this plugs directly into a 3 to 4 cell source, which is fantastic, perfect for a Miniquad. We have got the LED emitter at the front there, and it's recommended that you do not stare into this when it's powered on, because it could damage your eyes. You see, infrared cannot be seen by our eyes, but this could do some damage. So they say 50 centimeters away from people and don't look directly at it. So what do we get in the package? As well as that, this is a male JST connector, and that is to solder directly to your power distribution board. You are also given 2 spare of these front lens protectors there, because I guess the point of impact here is at the front. So if anything is going to break, it's going to be this glass at the front there, but I don't think this is going to break at all. It's absolutely rock solid, doesn't bend, it's not flexible at all. So if anything does break, they've given you a replacement. You've got 4 screws on the back there. I guess that you slide that out and affix those on there. So this system here costs about £64. They call it the IR4 Plus Night Flyer. And let's see how we connect it to a Miniquad. So here's one I prepared earlier. This is my trusty ZMR 250, and I have already soldered a JST connector to the power distribution board. So I have got my Velcro strap here on the top. It's a run cam strap, and that's just gonna fit on here like that. That plugs into there, and we're ready to go, right? Wow, not quite. You see, infrared is a part of the light spectrum that we cannot see with our eyes. You remember when you're at school and you shine light through a prism and it split all the colours up, and each one of those colours has a slightly different temperature, and when they got to the red colour and measured the temperature further from the red colour, the temperature was higher, and that is the infrared band that we cannot see. So what you need is what they call an IR sensitive camera, which technically is all cameras. You see, this is the HS1177 on the front here, and when you buy them you will notice that you have an option for an IR block or IR sensitive. Now, IR block is just a little lens in front of the sensor that blocks the infrared light and allows the camera to see normal colors just like your eye would, and every single camera has one of those. The thing is though, with the HS1177, its IR block is on the sensor and not the lens, so you can't just go and buy an IR sensitive lens for the HS1177 because they're all IR sensitive lenses. The actual IR block is on the sensor. So what you need to do is buy a FPV camera that has IR block removed or is IR sensitive. Now I actually didn't do that. I did something a little bit risky. So this is your HS1177 camera here. We all know them. And what I did, and I completely do not recommend this, but I didn't have an IR sensitive camera because we don't have them. It's usually for CCTV systems, which these are repurposed CCTV cameras. So I removed the IR block on the HS1177, and I will show you how I did that. So if you remove the two screws on the back of this camera and pull the back out, you can actually take the board cam out there, and I don't know if this is going to come out very well on the camera, but you can see there on top of the sensor there's sort of like a reddy sort of pearlescent glow to this lens, and that is the IR block. So it's not on the lens at all, it's on the sensor. And what I did was I took a heat gun, because this is glued on here. I took a heat gun and heated it up until the glue became loose and the entire lens just popped out. Now, as I say, I don't recommend it. I think I was lucky that it didn't break, or lucky that I didn't melt this surround here. But that is what I did for this particular system. I did go ahead and buy a board camera that was IR sensitive, and I recommend that you do that, but I wanted to get this video out as soon as possible, so I took the risk. So infrared is a long wave light frequency, very similar to how UHF is a long wave radio frequency. We can use that to our advantage because the wave is long, we get a greater control distance. However, the fact that we get interference and the band is quite noisy sort of balances out with us using 2.4 instead of the UHF system. But this is going to work in a similar way. This is going to emit infrared, and it's going to go a long distance and then reflect that light back into our infrared sensitive camera, and we should be able to see in the dark for quite a distance. Now, you may have heard of another way to fly in the dark with a thermal imaging camera, and that is slightly different to how this works. So you may have heard of a company called FLIR, F-L-I-R. They pioneer thermal imaging cameras, and they still use the infrared band. However, they operate in the lower end of the infrared band, so they don't require an emitter. However, they do require constant calibration to return an image, and that calibration causes the image to freeze for half a second, and that is no good for our fast moving mini quads. So in my opinion, this emitter is the best way to experience night vision with a mini quad. So us mini quad pilots like to enjoy our footage back in HD, so can you do that with this system? Of course you can. Now, it comes at an extra cost, but CJ Tech sell this lens here for the Mobius. Now, the Mobius is different than the Foxeer camera because its IR block is on the actual lens and not on the sensor, so that's a good thing because it means that we just have to replace the lens. In fact, I have got a Mobius lens here, and you might be able to see that little red tint to the lens, reddy purple tint. That is the IR block. So CJ Tech sell this lens for the Mobius, and you can just directly replace it. Now, the way that you do that is there's two screws underneath the Mobius. Just unscrew those and lift the top off there, and then on the actual side of the lens of the Mobius there's a little hex screw, and all you need to do is use a little Allen key. It's a very tiny Allen key. I think it was the 0.8 size, so really tiny. You unscrew that, and then you can unscrew the lens and then put this one in. Now, of course, you do have to find a way to focus this lens, and the way that I did that was I took the lead that comes with the Mobius and I plugged in the USB to the back of it, and then the composite out I plugged into a monitor, and then I spent some time focusing this up, and it worked really nicely. Now, of course, there is a problem with this system. You're going to have to keep it a night vision system unless you constantly want to be swapping out your lens and camera. One thing that I do like, though, is that I have kept this HS1177 with the IR block, and I can just take the screws out and just replace the actual board, and this can remain in place. You do have to refocus this lens, though, it seems. I don't know why that is. Maybe there's a slightly different focus required for the IR sensitive and the IR camera. I don't know. They also recommend that if you're going to mount your Mobius on the top here, which I'm going to do, is put a little bit of Velcro between the two, because this thing is going to get quite hot. So I've got my little run cam strap here. I'll just show you how I'm going to do it. Now, you might notice that I don't have any camera tilt on this either, and that's because for the first flight I want to make sure that I'm not flying fast. I want to get a nice slow first flight just to see how I cope with it. Now, one thing that they have documented is the RF noise created by this. Now, they're saying that it's still undergoing testing. However, they have found that with 2.4 gigahertz and 5.8 gigahertz, there isn't any noticeable degradation in range. So that is good to hear. So really, the last thing to do is to go and do some flying and see how it performs. So starting off with the DVR footage, and it's quite daunting when you take off because that spotlight underneath you just washes the picture out, but as soon as you take off you can see that the system is working really effectively. Now, you can see the trees at the back there. They are about 80 meters away, so I have to say I was really impressed with this system. You can see there that we've got a bright spotlight underneath us, and there is definitely an optimum height to fly this at. It's probably about 2 to 3 meters or so, and then that spotlight disappears. But those trees at the back are 120 meters away. Okay, they aren't completely brightly lit up, but you can see them in the goggles for sure. Really impressed with this system so far. So this is the very first flight that I did with it, so I'm just flying slow for now in angle mode. I'm going to switch to the Mobius camera now, and pretty much more of the same. It's really impressive. The only thing that I noticed is the same with any Mobius camera, is that it doesn't deal well with wide dynamic range, and it takes a little while for it to pick up the night vision in the background, and that's because there is such a high exposure of the spotlight underneath the quad. I would really like to try this with a Foxeer Legend 1. I'll have to see if the lens fits, because that one deals much better with the wide dynamic range. But you can still see the trees in the background. It's pretty awesome, I have to say, for such a cheap price. Now, they recommend that you fly with your quadcopter in fields where there are objects in it. I don't have that in this field. However, it is still really effective. I was so surprised. I didn't expect it to work this well. I can't emphasize how pitch black it was out there. I literally couldn't see anything with the naked eye, but with this system you can see up to 80 meters in front of you. I think what I'd like to try is perhaps getting a couple of these infrared floodlights and just dotting them around the field, and then you would get a really good flight with that, I think, because then you could sort of reference the ground a little bit easier. But honestly, it wasn't a problem, and in a minute I go and do some crazy acro to show you what you can really do with this system, because I was really impressed. Now, one thing that I didn't mention earlier is they recommend that you have the system on a switch, and if it gets hot it will actually lower the power of the strength of the infrared emitter. But I didn't find that a problem at all, and I was having a lot of fun with it. But I think that's enough of flying around slow. Let's go and do some acro and really have fun with this system.
Lights out, lying in your arms, and these feelings start to change. One look floating far away. I've never been here before. I don't know the score, but I never wanted you more than I do tonight. Escape with me. Will you escape with me? And we'll start brand new. Escape with me. Will you escape with me? And I've never been here before. I don't know the score, but I never wanted you more than I do tonight. Escape with me. Will you escape with me?